Hello and welcome back to the character controller tutorial. Much apologies for missing last week and inevitably missing well, I'm very consistent with my scheduling, as no, I don't have any consistency whatsoever. Very much apologies. Last time we went over how to connect the head to the body, and I left you with saying essentially everything works. All you have to do is add in a controller over here, or not controller, you just need to add in a mouse sensitivity, multiply that by multiply that right here, and essentially you now have a proper controller. I'm going to rename this to player because naming and all. Mouse sensitivity, you really want this to be not 0, because if it's 0, inevitably you're going to spend 30 minutes wondering where you made a mistake and realize it was this the entire time. Trust me, I know. I've made that mistake many times. Whoops, forgot that as well. Very basic things that you can miss and very hard to catch on to. Now this should work. Just put in 50. Today we're going to be learning how to lean character's head. This one I've spent a lot of time on trying to figure out how to actually do properly, and eventually I got something up and running. Unfortunately, it wasn't too good. However, one of my friends overlooked the code, told me where some of my flaws were, and then just sort of showed me what the code should be. Hopefully I can explain exactly how I understand it, as he has explained to me. Oops, too many. So with this, we're going to want a function for leaning, left or right. So we're going to do public void lean bool lean left. Essentially what this is we're going to say, alright, are we leaning left or are we leaning right? If we're leaning right, we're just going to say false and output the functions from there. If leaning left, then else. We're also going to need a preferred rotation, which is where we want to end up, along with the preferred position, because when you lean, at least in the games I played, when you lean, your character slightly shifts over. So we're going to do private vector 3, because it's a positioning. Preferred. I can't spell preferred. And we're also going on private quaternion. Preferred rotation. If that's, no, it's a float actually. This will be a bit confusing. So with the preferred rotation is how much we want to rotate to, such as if we want to rotate 15 degrees, then we'll say, okay, our preferred rotation is 15 degrees. Whereas if we want to rotate the opposite way, we'll say our preferred rotation is negative 15 degrees. There's enough variation here. Well, you could shorten it. It might be a bit harder to read, but I'd prefer to put it like this, because we can do preferred position equals vector 3 dot left plus, and then the standing. For now, we're going to replace the standing with a function for where the head actually should be, meaning if they're crouched, or it's going to return one position. If they're standing, they'll return another. And then we're going to do preferred rotation equals 15 degrees, because from what I've noticed, 15 degrees is a generally good place to end. 30 degrees and you go too far. Anything more than 30 is exaggerated, and anything less than 15 is kind of like, am I really looking to the side? But that's up to whoever's programming. Vector 3 dot right plus standing preferred rotation equals -15. Then, since we don't want to always have our character be leaning or checking to see if they're leaning, we're going to make a function called, not that, or a boolean called isLeaning. This will cut down on some of the calls. Private isLeaning equals true. Now in the update, we only want to update whenever the character is ready, so we're going to do dot. I don't believe we have that just yet. Nope, wait, we do. Okay. Let's see. If main controller.playerReady equals true, and this one will be separate from the from the player ready, because leaning can only happen when the player is ready, along with its own time, so it won't always be combined with is ready. isLeaning. From here, let's see, we're going to do the actual rotation, which I believe is another float. Yes, it is. Float actual leaning. This keeps track of where our current head is. So actual leaning will be, wait a minute. Yes, I forgot something. Rotation direction as well equals actual leaning is less than preferred rotation. I'm not entirely certain of what this was called when you use a shorthand if statement, though for the most part I am quite for the most part it cuts down when you want to do shorthand things that don't necessarily need an entire if statement, where you do, this is the if part, you declare it using this. If it is true, if it isn't true, then you output this. Again, I am not entirely certain of what its name is, as I'm not certain of what most names are. So let's do leaning. If preferred rotation equals actual rotation. Leaning. I should probably just change this to rotation. There we go. isLeaning equals false. So with this will stop us from needing to lean one way or the other. Float distance from target equals math f dot the absolute value, because we don't want to, how should I explain this? What we're, the calculation here, whether or not it's negative, will actually affect the outcome of where we're going to plug this number into. So we're always going to want a positive, because we're going to use the, what was it? Yes, we're going to use the other value that we got to determine the direction in which it goes. Because with this, the preferred rotation might actually be less or greater than the actual rotation. So essentially we're just getting the difference. If we got the actual, then we couldn't necessarily make very accurate predictions. We could. It would be bad though, because then we would have to take into account a lot more. Delta rotation equals math f dot clamp rotation speed. This can be another variable that, or not, actually no, because, yeah. So rotation speed, that essentially tells you how fast we want this to be rotating. We could make it a variable to test out during testing time. It's not entirely bad. It won't change though, unless it will. Like, for whatever reason you want it to change, put it in the variables. I'm not going to have it change, so I'm going to keep it here as a private. It's also a bit better to do it this way instead of having just a 20 in there. Mainly because with this, if I'm going to use this anywhere else, I want to see its name. Or I don't want to have to retype 20 in 20 different locations. 0, F, the minimum distance from target, that being the max. And then we times this by rotation direction. Essentially, if this ever goes into the negative, we won't ever be able to get past there. And we've actually skipped over that part, which is not a very good thing. Main controller, main camera, dot transform, dot rotate, note, root, rotate, main controller dot player body dot transform dot forward delta rotation space dot world. In all technicality, I only found out the rotation from self to world via experimentation. I found out that when I did self, the rotation, you could look upwards and rotate back and it would mess up the rotation. Whereas if you did world, it didn't actually have the same problems. So I sort of found out through brute force. Now when we go through here, we can say, oh yes, well in the walking function, wait, not the walking function, walking handler, we want the player to lean. Private void. And we only want to call it once, meaning there's two ways we could do this. We could set up a thing where, let's see, leaning, bull is left. The first one we could do is we could say if input dot get button or get main controller dot get variables dot get key type dot, and we'll go over here and add more stuff to that. Let's say key list lean left, lean right. Let's see. And here we can just do is left this, then do key list lean left, else key list dot lean right. It's a bit messy, albeit, but it's contained. It's an if within an if. So with this, we can say, okay, if the key is down, or if the key is even pressed, we would have to have a blocker of sorts, meaning private bool lean right and lean left. We would do if is left lean left or lean right. Essentially, we would go through and say, okay, well, if one of the two that is needed is already pressed, then we don't send any more. What this prevents is it prevents us from tabbing out and then coming back into the game and being like, oh, well, I'm not pressing the button anymore, so technically. A way to sort of get around that is you can go in and say, okay, actually no. These preventative measures make it so that we can't just tab out of the game and say, okay, well, I'm already pressing it. And because with the get key up and get key down, if you've tabbed out, essentially you're staying like, okay, well, now that I've pressed the tab out, I can release the key and it won't send back to Unity, so whatever happens from there is all good. When in all reality it's like, oh no, now you can lean 30 more degrees in the other direction. So it is leaning left or right. You want to also sort of say this as a false, which could easily just be stated, alright, like this, as in there. Is leaning left or right, false. Actually, flip the this, because if they're already false or if they're true, they're never going to get back up to here to say, oh hey, just so you know, we're not being pressed. Which is a good thing. When you get the key, you can just say, okay, well, is it already leaning left or right? If so, then I believe you can just do is left leaning left or leaning right equals yeah, no, this doesn't look like it's gonna go through. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's not gonna work. So it is gonna get a lot more complex and messy, and I'm fairly certain I still have this problem in my own. Actually, hold on, let me go check. Alright, I was able to figure out a situation in which case this should be good. All we do is we take in a bool. Is this the leaning left, leaning right? Who knows? We then do a reference, because if this wasn't a reference, it would simply modify the variable within inside this class. Having it be a reference, it basically puts it back out into where it was taken from. Meaning when we want this lean left, when it goes through, oh, it looks at this, it says, okay, the key's gotten down, this is false. Okay, now this, not an internal variable, but this itself is now true. We then lean. If it's not gotten, we make it false. This is false, and it can go back through. There is a situation in which this does need a little bit more code, because when you stop leaning, obviously you return back to the center. And we're going to do that right now. When let's see, we're going to do the function in where is head controller, public void stop leaning. What this will do is essentially, if there was more internals, we could, or as this advances, most likely we're going to put more into it, and the leaning is going to be individual to itself. Or, yeah. The functions within inside this might be used for something else, but for now it's just going to be used for leaning. We don't necessarily have our preferred head position equals to standing. The preferred rotation equals to 0, and is leaning is true because we want our character to go back to where they previously were, and we can say rotation. Technically, we could take this little snippet of code, put it into a really small function, and just call that function right here. It's not used enough for me to take notice of it, but it's something to keep in mind. If it's used more often, then you're probably going to want to put it into a different function. Alright, now that we have that, we have the keys. We'll need to add 2 more keys, leaning left and leaning right. We're going to go back in here, all keys. So we now have 7 keys. No. Oh, not what I wanted. We have 6, because I'm not entirely sure what that 5th one, fourth one was for. Let's go back into here. Oh, cartridge. Okay, that's what it is. 7 is 7. Alright, leaning left, we're going to use the E key. Leaning right, we're Q. Leaning left and right, leaning right. Oh, yes, there is one more thing I forgot. It shouldn't. Go over here. here. I'm an idiot, and I forgot to add it. Let's see. This one will be false. This one will be leaning right. Leaning. This one will be true. And leaning left. Or we have to do ref. There we go. Oops. I forgot another one. Head controller. Do we have it in a crouch state yet? I don't believe we do. Walking handler, change stance. We haven't put that in actually. Wonderful. Okay, well, for now, we should be good. Alright. Alright, I was a bit off. This one needs to be self, and the horizontal, instead of getting any components from the body, you just do vector up. Along with the vertical, you just do vector right. There was also the, how was it? Not input walking, nope. Where no. One other. Oh yeah. Wait, no. Yep, no. Should only be those two. Okay. Quite choppy. I'm not entirely certain why. I'm also not certain why those aren't working as well. Interesting. Alright. So the choppy movement was due to me trying to separate the head controller into here with the mouse movement. It didn't work out too well, unfortunately, and we paid the price. So now it's this. The horizontal movement can be restricted the same way that we restricted the mouse vertical. The mouse vertical, I believe, going negative will be taking you upwards, whereas going positive will be taking you downwards. So this was all fixed. My other mistake was I forgot to add it to the head controller. There's one final thing that we need to do in the head controller. No, it's not, it's the input. So we want to reverse this. For whatever reason, it's getting the opposite. I'm not entirely sure why. I have a suspicion that I probably messed up somewhere in the variables, reversed it, and I'm paying the price. We also want to do a lock on this, saying, okay, well, if this is, or if lean variable is true, then we do this. We also come down here and say main controller dot head controller dot stop leaning. Oops, nope. There's one last thing. In the head controller, I added this line, so that way when the head moves, or the head can move to whatever preferred position that we want it to. It's a local position because we don't want the head moving around in world space. That'd be insanity. Also, not very good. Oh my god. Should be 1 instead. I also somehow broke moving up and down. However, leaning's working. So that's good. One thing broke, another thing works. I'll come back to you with a fix to this. Hopefully it will work. It was very simple. I forgot to replace those two. Alright, well, we got leaning done. It should be good in most case scenarios, and Jesus Christ, I should really edit that out of the editor. You can lean over, you can look up, come back down, and your head is still perfectly straight on. The ground is parallel, you can move everywhere. Yep, everything seems to be working proper. Next time we're going to implement gravity, and with gravity we're also going to do jumping. I hope you enjoyed watching. My name is Holo74, and I shall see you all later. Bye.